Trump's unexpected response leaves the studio speechless. The air inside the brightly lit studio was now thick with tension. Lindsay Moore, the usually unshakable talk show host, found herself in unfamiliar territory, on the defensive. Across from her, Donald Trump sat poised, his gaze unwavering, his expression unreadable. The audience, which had initially leaned in Moore's favor, was beginning to reconsider the power dynamic unfolding before them. Trump's voice cut through the silence. Steady and deliberate. You, a feminist, a champion of so-called women's empowerment, just mocked a woman for her age. The same people who tell us to respect women, to uplift them, are now laughing at a joke about a woman being outdated, simply because she isn't as young as she used to be. So tell me, Lindsay, what exactly are you advocating for? The room, once buzzing with anticipation, was now completely still. Lindsay's forced smile twitched. She opened her mouth as if to respond. But Trump wasn't finished. You see, this is the problem. It's never really about principles, it's about power. You don't actually care about sexism. Lindsay, if you did, you wouldn't be sitting here making fun of a woman for aging. You'd be defending her. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Moore was visibly struggling. She had walked into this interview expecting to be the one controlling the conversation. Yet here she was, grasping for a comeback that wouldn't come. Still, she tried. Oh, Donald, she laughed, though the sound was hollow. I was just joking. Can't you take a joke? Trump raised an eyebrow, smirking. Ah, the classic excuse. It's just a joke. Funny how that only applies when it's convenient for you. If I had made a joke like that, you'd be leading a Twitter mob calling for my head. A few audience members clapped. Others nodded in agreement. Even some of Moore's usual supporters seemed caught off guard by the sheer effectiveness of Trump's counterattack. He leaned forward slightly, delivering the final blow. Lindsay, let's be honest. You didn't ask me that question expecting a real answer. You asked because you wanted a reaction. You wanted a moment you could clip and replay for ratings. But here's the truth. You didn't trap me. You trapped yourself. Because now everyone watching at home sees exactly what you are, a hypocrite. A heavy silence fell over the studio. Moore's face had lost its confidence. Her plan had backfired spectacularly. What was supposed to be a viral moment humiliating Trump had instead become a lesson in self-destruction, one she would never live down. The camera zoomed in on Trump, still smirking. Next question. The crowd erupted, half in applause, half in stunned disbelief. Lindsay Moore, for the first time in her career, had no response. Trump turns the tables, the interview that shocked everyone. The moment the words left Lindsay Moore's lips, the atmosphere in the studio changed. What had started as a seemingly light-hearted jab had now spiraled into an intense confrontation, one that she was rapidly losing control over. Trump's smirk remained, but his eyes burned with something sharper. A challenge, a lesson, a reckoning. You sit here and try to reduce Melania's value to an expiration date, he said, voice calm but unwavering. Lindsay forced a small smirk, attempting to brush off the growing tension. Oh, come on, Donald. It was just a joke. Trump tilted his head slightly. A joke? Well, let me ask you something. Lindsay, do you have an expiration date? The audience inhaled sharply. It was the kind of moment you could feel in your bones. A collective realization that the conversation had turned into something much bigger than either of them had intended. Lindsay froze. Her fingers twitched against the glossy desk as she calculated her next move, trying to find an escape route. But Trump didn't wait. You want to talk about outdated, like it's some kind of punchline. Let's be real here. If a conservative man had sat in this chair and called Michelle Obama outdated, you'd be calling for his career, his job, his head on a plate. A flicker of something crossed Lindsay's face. A hesitation. A moment of recognition that she had walked directly into a trap. You know what's really outdated, Lindsay? Trump gestured vaguely around the set. This tired, lazy, recycled strategy of trying to humiliate conservative figures by attacking their wives, their families, their marriages. When you can't take me down, you go after the people around me. Lindsay laughed lightly, shaking her head. Oh, please, Donald. Trump cut in, sharper now. Did you ask Joe Biden if he's ever thought about cheating on Jill? No, you didn't. Did you ask Barack Obama if he ever thought about cheating on Michelle? No, you didn't, because you know it's disgusting. You know it's low, but when it's me, suddenly it's just a joke. Silence. Even the crew members behind the cameras had stopped moving. The normally electric energy of the studio had shifted into something far more tense. More serious. Lindsay's jaw was tight. She wasn't used to losing control. But Trump wasn't just defending himself, he was flipping the entire script. He exhaled and let out a small chuckle, not one of amusement, but of disbelief. So tell me, Lindsay, when does a woman become outdated in your eyes? What's the cutoff? 45? 50? Should we just start retiring women from relevance once they hit menopause? Lindsay had nothing. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The audience wasn't laughing anymore. They weren't cringing either. They were rethinking. Lindsay sat up straighter, trying to push back against the wave of silence that had settled over the studio. She forced a light-hearted laugh. Oh, Donald, you're being dramatic. It was just a little fun. Trump didn't blink. No, Lindsay, it wasn't, and you know it. His tone was measured, his delivery razor-sharp, like a man who had seen this game played 1,000 times before. If it was just a little fun, you wouldn't be squirming in your seat right now. The audience felt it, the shift, the power in the room had flipped. Lindsay, scrambling, glanced at the crowd, looking for support. I think we're getting a little off track here, she said hastily. I was just making an observation. Melania is beautiful, of course. But let's be real, most men in your position tend to, go younger. Trump's smirk widened. And there it is. Lindsay hesitated. There what is? Trump leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on the desk. That little trick you all love to use. You insult someone, you mock them, and when you get called out, you hide behind, I was just making an observation. He shook his head. No, Lindsay, you were trying to humiliate my wife. Lindsay tried to speak, but Trump didn't let her. And let me ask you something, since we're talking about appearances and outdated people. He gestured toward her. You're what, mid-40s? Lindsay's breath hitched. The forced smile on her lips twitched. Why does that matter? She asked, her voice a fraction colder than before. Trump shrugged, his voice calm, almost casual. I'm just making an observation. The audience erupted. Some laughed, some gasped, some just watched. Because this wasn't the interview they had expected. Lindsay's face darkened. That's different. Trump tilted his head. Why? Lindsay's eyes flickered with unease. Because now it's about you. Lindsay. She opened her mouth to argue. But there was nothing she could say. She had walked into this expecting to win. Expecting fireworks. Instead, she had just given Trump the moment of the night. She let out a nervous chuckle, waving a dismissive hand. Okay, I get it. Let's move on. Trump leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. Yeah, I thought so. The audience knew it. The crew knew it. And soon, the entire internet would know it too. But the real explosion was about to happen online. Within minutes, clips of Trump's response flooded social media. Twitter exploded. Headlines erupted across every news outlet. Breaking. Trump flips the script on talk show host in viral exchange. Liberal host humiliated after attempting to joke about Melania Trump. Lindsay Moore thought she had Trump cornered. Then this happened. For the first time in her career, Lindsay Moore had no response. And for the first time in his, Trump didn't need one. The entire world had just witnessed the truth play out in real time. Lindsay Moore's career implodes after Trump's takedown, the aftermath. The moment the interview ended, it was already too late for Lindsay Moore. Within minutes, clips of the now infamous exchange spread like wildfire on social media. X, formerly Twitter, exploded with reactions, as millions watched in disbelief how Trump flipped the script and left the once dominant talk show host completely speechless. One of the first viral posts read, Lindsay Moore thought she was about to embarrass Trump. Instead, she got obliterated on live TV. This is brutal. In just 1 hour, the clip had over 3 million views. The comment section was a battlefield. Imagine the outrage if someone called Michelle Obama outdated on national TV. Lindsay Moore just played herself. Trump didn't just defend Melania, he exposed the hypocrisy of these so-called feminists. This is why the media is a joke. They preach about women's rights but attack a conservative woman the first chance they get. The media backlash begins. As the clip gained traction, Moore's media allies scrambled to control the damage. On MSNBC, a commentator labeled Trump's response as an unnecessary outburst and accused him of bullying a journalist. But the argument didn't land. Because this time, it wasn't about Trump, it was about Lindsay. People weren't just debating his response, they were questioning her words. Why did she think it was okay to frame Melania that way? Why did she assume women had an expiration date once they reached a certain age? The backlash came swift and relentless. By the next morning, headlines dominated the news cycle. Lindsay Moore under fire for disrespectful question about Melania Trump, The Washington Examiner. Did Lindsay Moore cross the line? The Daily Wire. Feminist hypocrisy. Talk show host faces backlash for outdated remark, Fox News. Sponsors begin to pull out. Lindsay's network executives panicked. Viewers flooded advertisers with emails. Do you support sexism? Is ageism acceptable as long as it targets conservative women? Would you have tolerated this if the question was aimed at Michelle Obama or Jill Biden? Sponsors didn't want the heat. Several quietly paused their ads on her show, while others demanded an explanation. Moore tries to fight back, and fails. Sensing the backlash spiraling out of control, Moore tried to recover. She took to Instagram, posting a carefully worded statement. As a journalist, I ask tough questions. That's my job. I regret if my words were misinterpreted. But I stand by my right to challenge public figures. But the internet wasn't buying it. The response was brutal. Misinterpreted? We all heard you. Lindsay, you regret that people noticed your hypocrisy. Not what you actually said. So much for empowering women, guess that only applies if they're liberals. The real fallout begins. By the next evening, Moore's name was everywhere, but not in the way she had hoped. What started as a cheap jab at Trump had backfired spectacularly, turning her into the target of a backlash she never expected. Media watchdog groups called her out for sexism and hypocrisy. An op-ed in the Wall Street Journal questioned, why would a woman who has spent years championing women's rights mock another woman simply because of her age? Even some liberal voices distanced themselves from Moore's remarks. On CNN, journalist Jake Patterson reluctantly admitted, look, I'm no fan of Trump. But this question wasn't journalism, it was a cheap shot. And he turned it around on her. Hard. Moore's network goes into damage control. Behind closed doors, her bosses were furious. A leaked internal memo revealed that network executives were concerned about backlash from advertisers, re-evaluating Moore's public presence, monitoring audience response and engagement. Translation? She was on thin ice. Viewership for her show dropped overnight. Advertisers hesitated, and the network wasn't willing to take a financial hit just to protect her. The forced apology. By the following Monday, Lindsay opened her show with an apology, a forced, half-hearted attempt to calm the outrage. In the heat of the moment, I made a remark that was taken the wrong way. It was never my intention to offend or degrade anyone. I deeply respect Melania Trump and regret if my words were misinterpreted. But the comment section was ruthless. Classic non-apology. Taken the wrong way? No. Lindsay, we heard you loud and clear. You regret that people called you out, not what you actually said. Her desperate attempt to contain the damage failed. Moore disappears from TV. By the end of the month, Lindsay Moore was on vacation. Some insiders called it a quiet suspension. Others speculated that she was done for good. One thing was clear. She had underestimated Trump. She thought she could land a punch and move on. Instead, she had walked into a storm she wasn't prepared for. The conversation was far from over. Even as the dust settled, something bigger had been exposed. This wasn't just about Lindsay Moore. This interview had sparked a much larger debate, one that stretched beyond Trump. Beyond Melania. Beyond even Moore herself. Discussions erupted across media outlets. Media bias. Why do journalists think they can attack conservative women without consequences? Double standards. If this had been a liberal woman, the outrage would be immediate. The way women, especially conservative ones, are treated in the public eye. On Fox News, one commentator summarized it perfectly. This wasn't just a bad joke. This was a window into how the media treats conservative women. And for once, they got caught. Even some left-leaning voices admitted that Lindsay had gone too far. And just like that, the interviewer had become the story. The woman who tried to humiliate Trump was now the one being humiliated. And no amount of damage control could undo what had just happened. Lindsay Moore's Melania Trump joke backfires, a media reckoning. The fallout from Lindsay Moore's attempt to humiliate Melania Trump didn't just spark a controversy, it exposed something far bigger. It forced an uncomfortable question into the public eye. Why is it acceptable to mock conservative women while others are off limits? The conversation shifts. At first, the media tried to control the narrative. They called Trump's response an overreaction and unnecessary outrage. But something unexpected happened. People didn't buy it. Even those who weren't fans of Trump started questioning the double standard at play. One viral post read, "I don't like Trump, but there's something ugly about using a woman's age as an attack. We don't do that to men." And that's when the conversation changed. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about Melania Trump anymore. The double standard exposed. Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, Michelle Obama, every powerful woman in politics, liberal or conservative, had faced criticism over their age, appearance, or husbands. But here's where it got interesting. The same people who had spent years calling out sexism in media, the same journalists who had built careers on exposing bias, the same activists who demanded respect for women in power, were suddenly silent when the target was Melania Trump. So they don't actually care about women. They care about controlling the conversation. For Trump supporters, this was proof of what they had been saying for years. The media's outrage is selective. Some women's dignity is worth defending, but others are fair game. Trump turns the attack into a win. Lindsay Moore had walked into the interview thinking she could humiliate Trump. Instead, he turned the entire conversation around. He didn't get defensive. He didn't lash out. He exposed the double standard calmly and effectively. And people noticed. For weeks, the internet kept the debate alive. Was this another example of bias in media? Would a liberal woman have been treated the same way? Why do certain women get protected while others are ridiculed? But perhaps the biggest question of all was the one that stuck the hardest. When did we decide a woman's worth had an expiration date? That question hit a nerve. Because at its core, this wasn't just about Trump. It wasn't just about Melania. It wasn't even about Lindsay Moore. It was about respect. The empowerment movement exposed. Lindsay Moore's joke revealed the hypocrisy of the so-called empowerment movement, the one that claims to fight for women, but only protects the ones they agree with. For many people watching, it was a wake-up call. Melania Trump was many things: a former model, a businesswoman, a first lady. But she was not outdated. She was not disposable. And no woman should be. Moore's humiliation was complete. The moment Lindsay Moore smirked and thought she had landed her punchline, she had already lost. She exposed herself. She exposed the media's bias. And she handed Trump the biggest win of the night. The big question: what comes next? What do you think? Should more people call out this kind of hypocrisy? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this breakdown insightful, hit like and subscribe for more content like this. Turn on notifications so you never miss another video exposing media bias and hypocrisy. The conversation isn't over. Let's keep it going. Lesson from the debate: stand by your values, no matter the narrative. In a world where media bias and double standards shape public opinion, it's crucial to think for yourself and stand by your principles. The Lindsay Moore controversy exposed a truth we often overlook: respect and dignity should not be conditional. Whether you agree with someone politically or not, fairness should apply to all. Don't let society dictate who deserves respect and who doesn't. Instead of blindly following the loudest voices, ask questions, challenge hypocrisy, and stand firm in your beliefs. Because truth doesn't need approval, it just needs courage.